So what is your role in supporting the Tennessee Foundational Skills Curriculum Supplement?
There you go.
I'm Miss Tammy Woolbright, and I am the pre-K through 8 supervisor here in Jackson County.
I'm Stacy Clinton, and I'm the instructional coach at Dotson Bridge School.
And I'm Debbie Searcy, and I'm the instructional coach at Gainesboro Elementary.
Christy Brown, the director of schools.
And so tell me just a little bit about what your role has been in supporting the supplement this year.
So my basic role is supporting our coaches and our teachers, making sure that we are providing the materials that they need, that we're providing the professional development they need, just basically thinking about what do they need to implement our curriculum to the fidelity that we get the student outcomes that we want.
I would say as a coach, it's definitely the support of planning and implementing best practices within foundational skills instruction.
And just planning a very structured and focused PLC, I think, was a big role that I had as a coach, and really thinking about what those PLCs would look like to best engage our teachers, and just a learning time. So
I think for me, just listening to our coaches and our teachers and supervisor, and making sure that that they have what they need, and that the vision for early literacy is followed through, and some coordination and coherency across grade levels and across the schools in the district, and just having a community of that, and that's the culture going forward.
So you had some experience last year in year one. So thinking about as you moved into year two, and then your expectations, how did year two of implementation compare to what you thought would happen?
Well, I'm going to say I thought there would be, and I think there has been a better understanding of the use of the materials and the purpose behind each component and the structure of it.
I think this year too there has really been an emphasis on the sounds first part. I think from year one to year two I can see a increase in that part of the lesson, and just expanding on the different parts of the lesson this year has been a big difference. So.
And I agree with Miss Deb for sure about that part of the lesson in particular, and I think a lot of that came from our summer reading training, because as we looked at lessons last year, at times we had teachers who were just skipping over the Apple pages, quote, but I was at one of the trainings this summer, and a first grade teacher shared, oh, I understand now why those pages are there and why we need to be doing those. And so we definitely have seen that. And even the other day I had a principal comment about the procedures that were in place and how rapid our teachers are able to get through that part of the lesson, because those routines are built and the students know what to do. So definitely see that. And then also I would say in year two, as far as my expectation, it's went a little bit slower than I expected. I went in thinking, oh, wow, we've got this momentum and we should be moving forward. But as a year two, what I've come to recognize is you start to hear that resistance a little bit. Like year one, everybody's unsure. They don't know about the curriculum. It's kind of exciting because you have something new. But year two, it starts to settle in, oh, we really are going to do this. And so you start to see a little bit of resistance and think about, okay, how are we going to overcome those challenges? And so that's kind of slowed down the momentum, but it just makes you stop and think more strategically about how you're going to overcome those challenges.
I think in year two that we've kind of moved from just the compliance part, just to get through and do what I'm supposed to do, to some understanding and moving to more fidelity in the implementation. And just going off of what Ms. Tammy was saying, is I think because there's a deeper understanding of what we're doing, that there are more questions being asked, and some back and forth on that, which I think can be a productive and good thing as we move forward. It's just not going through the motions, but really getting in there and understand what's going on and having the questions to ask. So.
And I also want to add, I think having coaches in every building, like last year in that year one implementation, we didn't have that. So even though we're moving slower, I do think that term, go slow to go fast, is definitely, an accurate term. But having a coach in every building has been so impactful. So I think one of the biggest changes for year two is to have that support in every building, and Director Brown has made that a priority, and so that definitely has made a difference also.
So in several of your answers, I started hearing like some of the things that you've learned during year two, during implementation. Once you add on to that, what are some other things that you've learned?
I mean, I think we have definitely learned, and even though we might have seen some resistance in some places, I do think we have learned and saw some benefits of implementing the high-quality instructional materials that are systematic in scope and sequence, and understanding the importance of building on previous foundational skills. And I think that's definitely something we have learned implementing this foundational skill program or supplement.
And for us to really be able to support our teachers, we had to really dig in and learn, understand the research behind it, and along with our teachers learning, I think it was really important that Stacy and I also learned and could answer those questions and help support our teachers in that way too.
So I think another thing that I have learned is if we are strategic, we will see results. Mm-hmm. So coming into this year too, we had said we're going to have a focus on small group instruction. Mm-hmm. And we have tried to be very strategic about how we have rolled small group instruction out. And we've seen changes in classroom through our IPG walks. And so that for me has just confirmed to me, if we take small steps and have a laser focus, because like you think, oh, we're implementing Tennessee foundational skills, and there's lots of areas to support, but if you're really focused on one area, you can actually measure that and take a step forward. And so I feel like that just confirmed for me that it is important to find that one thing that you're really trying to move the needle on. And this year that's been small group for us, and we've definitely seen results of that. Are we where we want to be? No. But are we farther along than we were last year? Oh, yes. So I think it's helped me to confirm that laser focus is really important.
So then I'll open this up to all of you. Ms. Woolbright referenced that you really had that focus on small groups. So what did that look like in a building to have that focus?
Well, part of that was incorporated into PLC time, focusing on small group instruction. And as a district, since we saw that as a need, we developed a small group routine and protocol for teachers to follow in their small group time, so that they're implementing those instructional practices that are our best practices. And so then during that PLC time, we've built on that focus from the planning of the small group instruction to even the rehearsal of small group instruction among grade level teams. So that's one thing we've used to support the small group.
Okay, so say more about the rehearsal part, because I think that's a component that's a lot of, it's some resistance there because it feels awkward in front of your peers to do that. So what did that look like?
Well, and it was awkward the first time we did it, and they were kind of, they smiled, but the more you do it, the more comforting you become with it, and the feedback that they were giving each other during that was beyond what I even thought it could be. So it was a learning experience that was definitely beneficial to teachers that are veteran teachers and teachers that are new to teaching foundational skills. So I think it's been a good thing that we've incorporated, and that's just something we have to strengthen in our lesson prep and protocols.
And that rehearsal has been something that we've done more like late winter, early spring, like we're just into that part, and we plan to continue that. So that's exciting to just see the results that can happen as we're doing that.
And I think also that we did the survey, the small group survey, and we found what the teachers needed as far as small groups to begin with at the beginning of the year. And so how could we support them in their biggest need in PLCs for them to really feel like we're behind them and we will help them with that. So,
and not only that small group survey has been a powerful tool, as Deb said, because they gave it at the beginning of the year, and one of the things we found out early on was it was just environment, like setting up our environment and getting comfortable with understanding how do we manage our room while we're trying to do this small group for some teachers. And so they could differentiate a little bit when they're coaching teachers or having conversations. You know, in this class, we're just working on getting our environment set. In this class, we have their environment set. We're working on the small group protocol, you know, in the delivery. So we also gave that survey at Christmas time. The results were different. Like, teachers were more comfortable doing small group. Like, we could measure exactly the change. And as we know, if the teachers' mindsets changed and they're more comfortable, we know the results are going to be there for the students. So we definitely can measure that. And then also, we had leader training in the summer going into this year that said small group is a focus. And so our principals were involved with that, and we set small group expectations. And so as a district, we had an expectation document that this is what will happen in small group. And, you know, early on, I mean, we had a couple of expectations that are just clear off your round table or your horseshoe table in a classroom, right? But, you know, we laugh now because we're seeing success that when we walk in rooms, every room has a place for that small group to happen. So that's a win, you know. So I think training your principals and your administrators was key for this laser focus. Also, thinking about the expectation document as a district was an important focus also.
So pulling it out now, you've kind of given some context around, feel like there's some successes around small group. Let's pull out bigger picture. Like, so what are some other things that went well this year?
I would say pre-K. I feel like last year, just from a district perspective, I don't know that we supported pre-K as much as we did our other grades. But this year, I feel like we've provided a little more support for pre-K. I know Stacy specifically has done some coaching conversations with her pre-K teacher. Also, I've met with the pre-K teachers and we've done some reflection on their sounds. So we have provided more support for them. And then so also we know that they need more support. Like this year we're implementing the whip around assessments and getting more comfortable with those. But we know that they need support going into year 2. So one thing I would say is pre-K is just to make sure that you have your pre-K involved. I think it's easy to just say, oh, it's a K2 foundational skills, but that pre-K piece is there, so it's important to align that pre-K through 2. And then the other thing that I think is going well is we are starting to see the data in AimsWeb, like tracking our data horizontally. And seeing like at the beginning of kindergarten to the beginning of first, and we'll soon be able to see the end of kindergarten to the end of first, and we're seeing where those tiers are moving. And so I think that's an outcome win, right? So I want to name that out, that we can see that horizontal movement, and so that's exciting. And you know, recently from a district perspective, with our screener that we use, we have identified the importance of the rate of improvement and understanding that better too, like educating our teachers on when they're looking at that data, what's the importance of that and why do we need to make sure that we're growing at the rate we need to grow. And we're seeing that also. So that would be 2 things that I would name out, is the data and the pre-K.
And just building on the data, I think that we've gotten better and teachers have gotten better about focusing too on unit assessments and making sure that we are identifying gaps that we still see within student foundational skills and focusing that on what we're supposed to be doing during our targeted support stops. So I think that's something that we've definitely improved upon.
So let's go to the opposite end. What have been the challenges during year 2?
I think Ms. Tammy sort of named that out earlier about some of the resistance, you know. So I think that's definitely been a little bit of a challenge.
I think for me, really developing that agenda for the PLCs, that I want more teacher engagement, and how can I, as a coach, really engage my teachers in a collaborative, learning community. We are a team. We can do this together. So I'm thinking about, really that challenged me as a leader for those PLCs each week. What are we focusing on? What are our goals for that particular PLC? And hoping the teachers will come away with those aha moments when we finish and really accomplish that, those goals. So that to me was a challenge for this year.
I think pacing is always a challenge. Obviously, I think our pacing year 2 is much better than year 1, but there's still challenges. You have snow days, you still have COVID, so it impacts that. So you have to think about that along the way. Your targeted stop days, your flex days that we call them, that are built in, we've had to think about, okay, how could we shift those? Where do they definitely need to be? So I definitely think that's a challenge too. Also scheduling some. And so I will say that, Ms. Brown has made it a priority to support our teachers, with what they need. And so part of that comes with like our PD. We recently just had a built-in day for this year that provided professional development for our teachers. But one challenge we have is, how could we build in additional days, or how can we plan like some hour-and-a-half days at the end of the day and get coverage, across the district where we can bring everybody together? Because as we work on unit internalization, it takes longer than 45 minutes. So that scheduling kind of becomes an obstacle or a challenge. But, as a director, she has supported us in trying to build some days in and, making teachers have coverage, those type of things. But that is one of the challenges I feel like that we're having, and even going into next year, because we want to make sure that we have some specific time in there that's longer than the 45-minute time.
So far you've mentioned PLCs and summer training and then some professional development for teachers. So those are some of the ways. Are there any other ways that you've supported teachers? And then thinking about those and prioritizing, were there some that you felt like were just really critical?
I think that the surveys that they mentioned, and we've done those throughout, Ms. Woolbright and I communicate regularly, and she's demonstrated how really teacher by teacher, just individualized responses to those survey questions, and letting me know, this is what they say the needs are. And there are some things that are not very difficult to meet their needs. It's just, classroom things that they should have. And those are easy ones to, some bigger concerns about the time that it takes. And the planning and learning and, new curriculum, and that the foundational skills and the early literacy piece is not all that we teach all day long, fitting everything in. So some of those concerns, and I've appreciated just the attention to each of those responses to those questions from teachers, and then the feedback of really, like, this is how we're addressing this concern from this teacher and this concern from this teacher, and making sure that the feedback back and forth is timely, and letting them know that we're listening, and this is how we have responded to the needs that you said that we have. And then of course a new survey comes along and we kind of compare to see where we are, and if those needs have been met, and what new things come up. So I just think that communication and timely feedback with the teachers, and letting me be a part of that, so I can support what these guys need, and down into the classroom level as well, has been, something I want to continue to do as we move forward.
And so for me, I would think that one of our greatest support has been our coaches. Specifically because they can provide one-on-one coaching when it's necessary. They're leading those PLCs and those structures. They are looking at those surveys with me and helping me, get that laser focus, like it's a team. And so I think that's one of the biggest levers going into year 2 that has helped us make a change, would be the instructional coaches and the support that they're providing. I think that's one of the main things that helps to move the needle.
One of the supports that I think has been very beneficial for teachers and as coaches to lead coaching conversations and feedback is doing the walkthroughs and using the IPG tool and using that tool to give specific feedback along the lines of what are good instructional practices during foundational skill time. So I think that's definitely been a good support, not only for teachers, but for coaches too.
Right. I think this year too, I've seen a difference from last year to this year as far as supporting is getting teachers to think about the student outcomes. How from the beginning of the year, where are our students? And then what can we do to get them to where we want them to go at the end? So I think this year we're really more student focused because of really analyzing our data and thinking about that and differentiating to meet the needs of each student. And I'm just excited to see at the end of the year where our students are as far as how much they've grown from, so I'm thinking that's a big.
And I think our structure of data has impacted that. Stacy spoke to the unit assessment data. Deb's talking about individual students and how we're looking at that. But, you know, our teachers understand that at the end of their unit assessments, they have a spreadsheet. They fill that out. We all have access to it. Ms. Brown has access to it. We're able to track that. And, you know, this year we have tried to say at the end of each of the unit assessments, we're trying to get, you know, 85% of our students at 85%. Before, you know, if we're not there, then we're not ready to move on to that next unit. And so I think, again, going to Deb's purpose, it's all about those students. So it's all about those students.
So let's think about another part of your vertical spine is really thinking about your leaders. So what did you do to support leaders differently in year 2 that you maybe didn't do in year 1, and then what was critical for them?
So for one thing, our leaders most of our leaders attended the summer reading training. So, and they have been our principals are very good of coming to any trainings that we have. So even this summer when we were doing some small group training, again, we had that. So just them being a part of any training they have and that knowledge. The IPG, we've had some specific work on the IPG, and we'll have continued work moving forward. One of our goals moving forward to support our leaders is to think about that IPG and also think about their feedback and how we could tie that to also a feedback model that works also with team a little bit and thinking about what that structure could look like. So we kind of hit both of those areas. But I think the other thing is those principals are in the walks. They're doing walkthroughs daily. We're having conversations. We've had group conversations about norming, and they've been in each other's buildings some, so it helps to see other instruction. So I think that's a difference too, is just giving them more opportunities where they're seeing that, and then setting up the communication between the coaches and the leaders. Like all of them didn't have coaches last year, but now that they do have coaches, like we've really tried to set up a structure of communication and support. And, you know, we have a coaches meeting every Friday, and they're able to communicate with me, okay, you know, what's going on in their building. We have a principals meeting monthly. You know, those structures are in place. The principals are aware of what's happening with the coaches. So I think that's important too. I've tried to make that communication more streamlined in year 2 than year 1. So we have that vertical spine with our communication overall.
I think that just a district goal, I mean, it's really number one. I don't think anybody, I think people know that's being communicated, that our expectation is that our early literacy is strong and that, you know, our kids are reading on grade level, and I think just communicating that, making that the expectation and bringing that into most conversations that we have with principals, and they are involved in each step along the way, and I mean, they're meeting those expectations, but we've communicated that clearly and just made sure that they're a part of everything that's going on in the classrooms and supporting our coaches, and have had some conversations about that. So I think just involving them at each step, and again, just having clear expectations and feedback on that has been a good thing for our principals.
And they do come to our PLCs also.
They
They're
do.
there, they're like involved in what we're doing, and just they're a part of, when we do have that PLC, they're always there, so.
So that was the question I was just about to ask.
Yeah.
So what is that shared responsibility between the coaches and the principals as far as that PLC? Like, who takes the lead on that? What does that look like?
I mean, as the coach, you know, along with Ms. Tammy's support as our
Right.
supervisor, we do lead the PLC, but they're always there for support and also they're learning alongside us and with teachers.
That's just very valuable for them to know and realize what their teachers are
Mhm.
doing. And I know Miss Tammy has also supports us and has come to a lot of our PLCs too, so.
As far as roles, just frankly too, I mean, them having a lot of knowledge of what's supposed to be going on. If we have instances that maybe there are some things not going on that we would like to
Right.
see or have communicated that should be going on, is just to have some follow-up in some of those places after it has been addressed and you know, support given and those things. So, I mean, there is that aspect of it, and of course, that's not the primary role of their involvement in this, but it certainly can be a help to support our coaches and what needs to be going on in our buildings and as we implement this.
So PLCs keep coming up as a really important part of your implementation, or that's what it seems as I'm listening. So I'm wondering how your PLCs have evolved from last year to this year during year two.
I think the mid-year, year two, we kind of had some conversations of our coaches were balancing being in the classroom and spending a lot of time of planning PLC. Our goal second semester was to start what we called like a 2-week cycle, where 1 week it would be kind of intensive PLC planning, and then week 2 would be more just planning with the teacher, more opportunities for them to get into the classroom. Now, have we made that week 2 cycle as strong and as fidelity as we want it? No, we've had some obstacles with snow days and some things that we didn't have control over. But we do, the couple of times that we have been able to be consistent with that, I think it has taken some stress off of our coaches and given them an opportunity to be in the classroom. And so I see us moving forward kind of with that. So, and that came about, again, listening to the coaches and their concerns that they're having that, okay, I'm getting too splintered. You know, what do you really need me to do? So I think by listening to them, we're trying to make adjustments along the way. So I think that would be one of the biggest shifts in our PLCs from year 1 to year 2. We're not exactly there, but we're closer than we were at mid-year. What else? Anything else you all can think about?
Changes in PLCs.
Yeah, changes.
I just think from year 1, we were really focused on that unit and lesson internalization and lesson prep and getting the teachers ready to go into the classroom. That was basically, and then year 2, I think we have, I know K through 2, we've worked on, really focused on the foundational skills this year. And I think that's a big shift too, that we've really looking at that data, and therefore how are we going to address the data with our small groups. So I think that was probably the biggest focus the biggest shift too, or one of the biggest.
Yeah.
That we.
Yeah, because last year we did
Right.
like knowledge building maybe 1 week and our foundational skills
Right.
another week.
And we-
And so this year we have mainly just focused on foundational skills. We made a structured decision that this year it's going to be about foundational. It was small groups, so that definitely is
And
true.
then- And we've made that laser focus on small group instruction.
data.
Yeah, and data, so.
Yeah.
Let's take a few minutes and really kind of just swap and focus on just pre-K for a few minutes. So thinking about last year to this year, what did you learn between year 1 and year 2?
So for me, for pre-K, I think between year 1 and year 2 was actually trying to internalize exactly all the materials that were out there from pre-K. We had a little confusion about just the little sounds first part, and then how there are other pieces that can be used in within our regular curriculum. So just getting in those resources a little bit and trying to make sure that we were all on the same page for pre-K. And then also, we discovered as we were working through this process and working with our teachers, pre-K is the first time they really, really hear those sounds. And as we videotaped some teachers and had conversations, it surfaced that we really needed to work on our articulation of the sounds. And so that was something that has been a focus this year. We did some coaching conversations with our pre-K teachers around the articulation. We had a pre-K teacher that actually has put a poster beside her that has like the 5-second sounds and all of that to remind her when she's making those sounds. And then the other thing is going back to the data, we know that pre-K is that first picture of data. And there's whip around assessments and there's things in there that we can capture to take to kindergarten, and we haven't been doing that. So that's the other thing that we're trying to work on right now, and we hope to improve that next year and understand that better.
Well, like Ms. Tammy said, one of the opportunities for improvement that we saw was articulation of sound. So as a coach, I had the opportunity to sit side by side with a pre-K teacher, and we just watched the articulation video, and we noted the differences between the sounds and what are the sustained sounds, what are the quick sounds, what does that look like. So I think it definitely helped the teacher to be mindful and explicit in planning and practicing the sounds and making sure that they're precise with articulation of sounds in front of their students.
And we also had some pre-K teachers to ask about the movements. So they wanted, and there are videos on the site that you can look at, but we also reached out to pre-K, and I can't remember her name, but at the State Department, she came and did a video chat with all of our pre-K teachers, went back over all the motions. And so when our teachers asked for that, we made sure they got the support. And so, sometimes going outside is good too, as well as inside. So they also heard from another person who was able to model those movements for them, and that helped also.
Seems like this year, this is the year that we've kind of just rolled pre-K all into this. I think it was kind of exploring that, and like you said, materials and things like that in year one, and this year it seems like they've been brought in as to a more integral part of the whole of the whole. So I think that we're going to see students coming to kindergarten more ready.
And, the data supports that also. We have, within our curriculum, we have a section of like a beginning year, a mid-year, and an end-of-year assessment. And the mid-year assessment, that's about the phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, our students did very, very well on that section because they're doing that every day, and you go in those pre-K classes, and so that section of that curriculum was good. It was high because they're getting those repetitions and those opportunities. So that's exciting to see that too.
So we already talked about how you supported teachers in general. Did you support the pre-K teachers differently in any way?
I think it is different in every building. We have one pre-K teacher that's at a middle school. And so the support there, like she has a coach in that building, but that coach is more for middle school grades. And so honestly, I supported her more just kind of from the district level as pre-K supervisor. And then each of them have teachers in their building. And so we have differentiated a little bit just based on what they ask and where their needs are. And also, again, we have also talked about scheduling. Like, I think last year at GES, the pre-K teacher was in the PLCs more. We included her in some of the kindergarten PLCs, but this year with scheduling, that hasn't always been able to happen. So that's something we've talked about. What change can we make to do that? In Stacy's case, she really hasn't been able to be in that PLC. It's been more one-on-one coaching, but they've had a set time that they meet sometime during the week. So it does look different, but again, we're refining our process as we go, and I hope to think about some of those scheduling challenges that we could put them with our kindergarten teachers at least maybe once a month to ensure that those conversations are happening.
So you've surfaced several things that went well, and also you've surfaced some challenges. Anything else that you'd like to share about pre-K implementation?
I think the only thing I would share is that our pre-K teachers are able to speak to the differences that are happening in their classes because of it. So even at the beginning of this year, when we were just barely implementing, like Ms. Brown said, it's a stronger implementation this year, they could talk about how their students were rhyming better. And even this year, like when I'm having pre-K meetings with them, they are able to articulate the difference in their students prior to using that supplement and then using the supplement now. So I think that just speaks to itself.
So let's take that now and pull it out. You started really talking about the impacts on students. So let's look across all grade levels now. What else would you say has been, what are the big impacts on students during year 2?
Well, I think with the focus on sounds first and that systematic scope and sequence, I think our kids are reading, well, thinking of it from kindergarten, I think they are reading better and they are reading quicker. They have, I know that's something that teachers have expressed, that by, Christmas, we've got kids reading, in kindergarten.
I've heard that when
Yeah.
I visited classrooms. I mean, they're very excited to say, look, watch what this kid can do. And it was around Christmas,
Right.
and like I've not had kids to be able to do this at this level at this time of year, and that's happened a few times, and they're excited to show me and speak about that they can tell a difference already, which is exciting and I think motivating to keep learning
Yeah.
and keep going with it.
Well, there's really more student engagement when the teachers are, when they are doing the sounds first part of the lesson. You go in there and it's all the students are it's just amazing to me that they are, engaged, more engagement as far as the foundational skills lesson, I think. So that's a big,
We've seen that in some of the
Yeah.
walkthroughs that you and I have done recently,
Yes.
and just, they are engaged, and teachers are, with their students, and they're having fun with it too. I mean, I can see that they've become a lot more comfortable with that, and I would say the engagement is across the board. I think that has been a positive thing.
I think student outcome wise too, if you walk our halls, you can see some of the writing on the wall. So as they're starting to understand their sounds, we're going from decoding to encoding. So you start seeing students apply that in their writing. So we're starting to see some of that happen. So, and then also I think just for student outcomes, if you're in and out of the classrooms, you see students being comfortable with sounding out words, like that productive struggle. Like it's, we're building that productive struggle all the way down and, helping them to understand, we're not just giving them answers. Don't tell them the word. Let's not cue. Oh, look at the picture. Look at this. We are actually attacking that word and using our sounds to attack that word. And students are comfortable with that. And I think that's huge. Because obviously, if we build that in students at that age, they will continue to understand, it's about pushing ourselves and moving forward. The other outcome I would say, I've already spoke to a little bit, is about the Ames Web and actually seeing the reading come to life, but also, I think our teachers and our families, we've had to help them understand, like, spelling, like, we had the old spelling test, we studied it, and at the end of the week, we made 100, and we moved on, and we still couldn't apply it, right? So student outcomes, positive or negative, we've had to understand that spelling is not just about memorizing a word for a test and moving on. That spelling is actually understanding that sound and being able to apply it in our writing and into the decoding. And so I think we're starting to have those conversations more, and that helps with the overall outcomes for students when our families understand and our teachers understand what the purpose really is for that spelling. And that's been a shift.
I'm wondering, as you think about, again, from year 1 to year 2, what was the greatest barrier to effective implementation in year one that maybe you were able to overcome during year two?
I mean, I think, and I was in the classroom last year, so this is kind of coming from that teacher perspective too, but having all of those materials and then not fully understanding yet how they all fit together, how the structure of the lesson, once you caught on to that, and that's why I think this year has been better too, is because we have dug in and we have figured out this is why it's like this is the purpose of it, this is why we use the decodables like we're supposed to. Those are things I feel like in year two, the material usage and the structure of the curriculum we've definitely gotten better with.
We did commit when we started this that we're going to get all the things.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to make sure that teachers have all the things that they need and are supposed to have. And so I imagine that it may be overwhelming when you have all these things.
Right.
And so I think we, from some conversations that we had, we did have some things maybe because of some pacing and stuff like that, maybe not, I would say being skipped or not gone as deeply as we should, and then realizing, further down the line, because they're not as familiar with the materials, like, oh, this really is related to this, and I have to do this. And so I think that did seem to be a challenge from, the conversations and things that we've had, and overcoming that this year, I think is just the familiarity with the materials. And yes, it is all related, and but I think that it's been a good thing too, though, to have all those things. Sometimes we've tried to, just as a district, we're not as much coherence of, okay, we're going to get this piece or that piece, or we're going to try to get this later, and we've really tried to provide all of the things that the teachers need and want to be able to do that. But I've heard just a difference in just you all talking in our conversations of them understanding how it's related. And yes, we do need to do this with fidelity, and I don't know 100% this year, but I do think that it's much improved and overcome the majority of that.
And I think, I don't know, this is kind of a odd thing to say, but like last year, I think the why, even though our surveys were saying our teachers believed it, and our teachers, were bought in, and we were seeing 100%, and this year we're not seeing 100%. But last year, they were just answering, like they didn't really understand the why. And so I think we were battling the why last year, even though the survey maybe said we weren't. And this year, I don't think we were battling the why. I think the majority of the teachers have come to the understanding of why we're doing this, why this is explicit and systematic. It's not 100%. You're going to always have a few that, aren't, and you work there. But I think that is a change. Like I felt like last year we were doing that. And then going to her point, that lesson internalization, you're constantly doing that lesson internalization. But last year it was really changing. There's a huge difference between lesson internalization and planning. And so last year that was a huge shift. Well, this year we already understand we need to annotate and what that internalization looks like. So we were in like fidelity last year, just compliance, everybody was using it, but now we're looking for integrity. Are we using that lesson to fidelity, but does it have integrity? And so that is a different ball game, and we still have a few places that we're looking for fidelity, but overall, now we're talking about the integrity of the lesson. What are those teacher moves that you are making that is going to make a huge difference for that one or two students to get them at that? So I think that's the big difference between year one and year two.
So you talked about the difference between the why in year one and year two, and what perception versus reality is kind of what you were sharing. What do you think caused that shift? So you saw you're seeing a difference now. Can you pinpoint what caused the shift?
Well, I think training, for one thing. I do think that state training for the 2 weeks was powerful because we had been telling them and we had been sharing the research.
But then somebody else did.
Then
so.
somebody else told them,
True.
and they were with multiple peers. We didn't just host our own cohort. We went to different cohorts. And at the time, that was kind of, that was hard for me as a supervisor trying to make sure everybody was where. But now that I look back, I think that was good because the cohort that I had the pleasure of being in, there were multiple districts with multiple curriculums, but we had Tennessee Foundational, and the majority of that learning, it was easy for them to follow that and understand the why behind it. So I really think, and that's kind of an odd thing, but I looking back, I think sending the cohorts differently in this early reading was a good thing because they heard other districts and heard other teachers talking, and they also heard teachers talking about maybe their curriculum wasn't easy to, it doesn't have all those pieces. How were they going to have to pull that in? So I do think that was a big thing. And then the other thing is it has to start at the top, right? So as Ms. Brown said, our administrators have to support our coaches. She supports me, I support them. We're all vertically aligned. And I mean, if they thought it was going away, it's not going away,
We are still going to do this.
And this is our goal, and this is her expectation, and she continues to support that, and that conversation happens, and that principal supports that. So I think that's there too. It's not, if we pretend we're going to do this, it'll be okay. No, this is what's best for kids, and that is her priority, and she makes sure that we're doing what's best for kids.
I'll just add to, like, as a teacher and you have all the things and you can make it what it should be for kids, and then having the background knowledge we had going into that training made a huge difference in understanding the why behind the materials. So that was definitely a blessing to have had that as a teacher in the classroom and then sitting in that training. So as a district, that support was huge.
Well, it's encouraging to hear, too, that our teachers go to the training, and they do have maybe more background than we heard from some others, and just to be able to ask the questions and move forward. So it's encouraging. There's been some other instances, too, that we've been a part of different trainings and different networks and things, and coming away feeling like, okay, we have been preparing for this. We have done the things ahead of time, and to be in a place where our teachers are as knowledgeable as anybody. And I think that's motivating and encouraging for them because we have done the groundwork here and made it a priority.
So before we stop talking about year two and kind of move to a forward-thinking conversation, is there anything else that you'd like to share that maybe that didn't come out in the conversation about implementation during year two?
I'll bring up that we have several new teachers, either brand new or just a year or two in, and that's always, we're putting new teachers in what I feel are really crucial roles of teaching our youngest, how to read. And so that is huge. And so that is, I don't know, concerning. It's, it's exciting. You have new teachers that are excited to get started. But I feel like we have several new teachers for a district our size in those grade levels. And I want, the very best for those kids. And sometimes, we're training the new teachers as they come in too. But I felt like the structure in this and the structures we've had in place, the materials that we've invested in, we've seen some really strong, teaching and practices going on, even with our newest teachers. And that's really encouraging for me. Just having those things in place, and felt like they've had a lot of support and rely on you guys and are comfortable doing that and do often. And that has been just really a positive thing for me to see that, and to go in those classrooms and just to see the work that they're doing. I'm encouraged, and just really, one of the things that I do when I visit those classrooms, and I usually copy Miss Tammy on it so she knows and we can stay in tune on that, but it's to give those teachers feedback, as in particular our newest ones, all of them, but in particular those, and encourage them that we're seeing some strong practices here, and just want to let you know that it's noticed and recognized, and to keep doing those things. So that's been, I want to mention that the structures we have in place, the curriculum that we're using for this, I think that it looks really good and really strong, even in our newest teachers' classrooms. Anything else?
All right, well, let's look forward for a few minutes. So based upon what you've learned this year, so how have you started translating that learning into a plan for next year? So what is that starting to look like?
I think Ms. Tammy kind of spoke to it earlier, is trying to make our PLCs that kind of 2-week cycle, having a strategic focus, and then that following week being more, student work-based, data-based, feedback, and then, kind of that plan, act, do cycle. And then just keeping that cycle going, so.
Actually having time to get in the classroom and to model maybe what a small group looks like, and the teachers love that when we can, I know, modeling some lessons or for them, or what does this look like, and I think the more time we have to really get in there, I think the teachers really appreciate that and want to say, oh, they'll like, okay, great, can I have your, let me have your lesson plan. And so I think the more we can do that versus what, I think we can evolve into doing that more next year. I think that can make a big difference.
I agree. I think moving into year 2, we've already been at our coaches meeting on Friday, kind of asking questions about, okay, what kind of training do we need, going into year 3, what supports, and we've had conversations about we don't necessarily need curriculum training, even in our knowledge building. We need internal training, so we're planning, what does that look like? What supports do we need for teachers specifically going into year 3?
Individualize
it, right, and think about, and it's kind of different at each grade level even. So thinking about, okay, what does kindergarten really need? What does pre-K need? What does first grade need? And how can we support them? Obviously, we know with that small group laser focus, we want to continue that, but we've also had conversations about, we feel like now our teachers are getting better at looking at end of unit data, but we've had a lot of conversations about missed opportunities of looking at day-to-day data, that our students are, doing their writing on their worksheets or writing those words down, but we're not sure how much our teachers are internalizing that moment. We made subtle things by buying clipboards for all of our teachers to talk about the importance of anecdotal notes when they're, either doing small group or even during their class. Like, I watched a video of one of our teachers last night actually, and she was doing chaining, and as the class was working on their chaining folders, I could see her going around and making notes as she was observing their chaining folders. So we want that to be a practice in all classrooms, and we're not there yet. So I think year 3 focus will be day-to-day data. What does that look like when you can take those anecdotal notes day-to-day and plan tomorrow a little different from today, because this child doesn't know the CH. So that, I think, is kind of what we've talked about and where we're going for year 3.
Sure. I want to say that with going forward too, we do have some of the more focused tutoring in place, and then our summer school opportunities. I mean, if we have all the data that we're collecting through the year and different, recent and over the year, that those skills can be targeted for those students, and they can come back even more ready. They're moving further along now than they have been, but even more so if we can get those students in there and take care of some of those things that we're seeing in that data, or gaps or whatever, and having them come back even more ready. And I just think more timely, like you're saying, instead of overall and let's look back on it, but just more timely and recognizing and addressing those things quickly and just keeping them caught up and not waiting until the end. So I think that I look forward to that, and I just think they're going to start moving faster and improving at hitting a higher level at each level. So I look forward to that.
I also think we're having some conversations about the communities of practice and the topics that were used in those and the foundational IPG. Like what going into next year, what does that look like? Supporting our principals again and our administrators to making sure that, we're continually recognizing what best practices look like in that foundational classroom, and then feedback that we're giving going into year 3. And then, like I said, the communities of practice really broke the IPG down in the sections, and so thinking about what does that look like for our teachers, for them to truly understand when we come in their classroom and we are looking for best practices. We've made it a goal this second semester when we're given the feedback to really try to identify the core action and be laser focused. Here is something that was a strength. All right, here's something that we're working on. And so we've really tried to label those core actions and have those conversations with teachers, but I'm not sure they truly understand, sometimes our feedback and why we're going there. So we want to spend more time within that IPG, and I think some of our communities of practice work and the convening work that we have another one coming up in April. I think that helps us to strengthen our learning, and that's something that we can, plan for year 3.
Anything else about year 3 planning? All right, if not, thank you.